I very rarely talk about COVID-19, but today I think, given the fact the World Health Organization has renewed its call for China to share data on the origins of the disease, marking 5 years since the virus first emerged in Wuhan, it's important to pick these subjects up. And this call, underscored by the WHO's Director General, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, has been framed as both a moral and a scientific imperative. The WHO's statement, issued on December the 30th, highlights the critical need for transparency in understanding how COVID-19, how the pandemic began. It's not merely an academic question, it's about preventing future pandemics. And as Dr. Tedros warns, the next pandemic can come at any moment. Without cooperation, the world remains vulnerable to repeating the same catastrophic cycle. And the debate over COVID-19's origins remains contentious. The dominant theory among scientists is a natural zoonotic spillover, possibly from infected animals sold at Wuhan's seafood market. And this was reinforced by a recent study concluding it was beyond reasonable doubt that infected animals were the source. Yet the lab leak theory, once dismissed as a conspiracy, persists, with questions about the Wuhan Institute of Virology's research into coronavirus and the proximity of the two places, the lab and the seafood market. China has consistently rejected the lab leak hypothesis and claims it has shared substantial data. However, the WHO counters that crucial data and access remain absent, and the lack of cooperation has fueled global tensions, particularly within the US, where accusations of a cover-up have long been part of the narrative. In its statement, the WHO reflects on the swift response after its China office picked up a report on viral pneumonia in Wuhan on December the 31st, 2019. By January 13th, 2020, it had coordinated the first global blueprint for SARS-CoV-2 testing. And while the WHO had was criticized for initially praising China's transparency, it later grew vocal about Beijing's reluctance to cooperate fully in investigations, particularly as the origins of the disease had already been noted and were effectively being sidelined or obscured by the Chinese authorities. The pandemic taught the world painful lessons about its vulnerabilities. Countries have made strides in pandemic preparedness, yet, as the WHO notes, many weaknesses in systems remain unresolved, and the ongoing negotiations over global pandemic treaty plans highlight these divides, particularly between wealthier nations and poorer ones concerned about equitable access to vaccines and treatments. Beyond the immediate health crisis, the pandemic reshaped the global landscape. It accelerated efforts to diversify supply chains away from China and underscored the importance of global health governance. Yet it also exposed fault lines in international cooperation, particularly around data sharing and accountability. The call for transparency isn't solely about assigning blame, it's about honouring the millions of lives lost and recognising those still suffering, whether from acute COVID-19 or long COVID or novovirus and so on. As the WHO put it, understanding the origins is fundamental to building a healthier tomorrow. The WHO's call to China is a reminder of our collective responsibility to learn from the past. And without data, without cooperation and trust, we risk stumbling into the next pandemic unprepared. Whether zoonotic or lab-derived, the origins of COVID-19 remain a crucial question, one that demands answers not for political gain, but for the survival and the resilience of humanity itself.